Hi there. So last week I didn't have an opportunity to do my Wednesday devotional. You all know that I had a little bit of oral surgery, and Jeff thought that it might be fun for him to have some surgery yesterday. He's home, he's fine, everything's great. But I did have the opportunity to spend the day yesterday at New London Hospital. I was lucky they were allowing people to go into the late waiting room, so I was there from around 10:30 in the morning to about 6:30 last night, and they were doing a really good job. They were rotating people through. People were coming in for labs or x-rays, and so I never got to sit with anybody for more than a few minutes before they were called in to do whatever it was that we're going to do. And even if they were there for a bigger chunk of time, because it's COVID, there's no conversations. You're either with somebody who's really super happy to be around people, or they're kind of cranky because of everything that's been going on. So people pretty much kept to themselves. And it wasn't until the end of the day that the last person who came through was sitting down, and I was knitting, and they looked at me and they asked me what I was making. And so I started talking about it. And then all of a sudden, this person started talking, and we both had our masks on, so all you could see were our eyes. And as this person was talking, they just started sharing more and more things about their life. And it was clear that some of the things that they were sharing were a little rocky, and then it became even more clear that some of the things that they were sharing were bumps in the road that they were experiencing. And that was an interesting sort of thing. The person went in to their appointment, and about 15 minutes later they left, gave me a big old happy wave, and I waved back, and that was all great. But I was really struck by how this person opened up to me. I didn't know this person, and they shared some pretty big things in their life with me. And the only thing I could think of was the mask. When you wear a mask, maybe it relieved them so that they could release or reveal some truths. Because you don't see someone's judgment. You don't see what their reaction is to what they're saying. So I thought that was an interesting thing. The other thing was, when that person left, they were clearly in a different place. And it could have been their appointment, but it could have also been that they hadn't had an opportunity to release some load that they were walking around with. And then I started thinking that perhaps listening could be a gift. You know, listening can be hard to do, especially when someone's talking about something that you don't particularly have an interest in, or they're sharing an opinion that you don't share. But when we listen, truly listen, that can really be a wonderful thing for people. There's a saying that says, if you want to preach the gospel, if necessary, you can use words. When we teach the gospel, we're supposed to use our actions and our behaviors and the way we live our lives. And that using words is kind of the last thing to do. But, you know, I think listening was a way to share the gospel. So I went right into the gospel to look for some answers. And I found something. I went back to thinking about listening, though, and that the tricky bit about listening. And so the things that we have to remember when we do listen to people, or the things that I have to remind myself, is to be present, to not be looking out the window, to not be thinking about what I'm making for dinner that night, but to really be there with the person when they're talking, to have an open mind, especially when they might have a difference of opinion than I'd have. To listen with respect and compassion, to resist jumping in, to resist either sharing your story or making a comment or a judgment on whatever the person's saying, to watch your body language and watch theirs too. watch how they're talking to you. That can really be helpful when you're listening, because then you might know whether to ask questions or to just be quiet. And that's another thing about listening, to honor the silence, to leave spaces between the words or leave spaces within the conversation. And I imagine that that might have been a practice that Jesus would have employed. So what I found was in this wonderful Bible that was suggested to me by a friend, who it was then suggested to her by a friend, and so on and so forth, and I was using it in our Bible study, was in the book of James. And in James, it talks about how the Chinese, James does talk about it in this introduction. It says the Chinese picture letter alphabet, the symbol for crisis, is a combination of two characters. One means danger and the other opportunity. And you can look at it either way. So reading through James, there's all sorts of suggestions of how to look at challenges as opportunities. So the question that they ask is, if God intends these problems as opportunities for me to grow rather than dangers for me to fear, how can I cooperate with him to make the most of these faith-stretching trials? And so, to be perfectly honest, yesterday, sitting in the waiting room for a lot of hours was trying for me. But to have that opportunity to listen to someone at the end there, that was it made it worth it. Well, Jeff coming out of the operation pretty well has made it worth it as well, especially. But knowing that in this challenge, something really good came out of it. So I'd like to read a little bit from James. It's about faith and endurance. And it's James chapter 1, verses 2, and I think we'll go to 20, up to 20. Anyway, here it is. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it as an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. Believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. And those who are rich should boast that God has humbled them. They will fade away like a little flower in the field. The hot sun rises and the grass withers, the little flower droops and falls, and its beauty fades away. In the same way, the rich will fade away with all their achievements. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. And remember, when you are being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So don't be misled, my dear brothers and sisters. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. He chose to give birth to us by giving us his true word, and we, out of all creation, became his prized possession. Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. And maybe slow to get impatient. So that was my thought for this Wednesday. I hope you're all well. I hope you are all home. I hope you are all sane. And I hope you all have an opportunity, like I did, to share the gift of listening. Have a great week.